Hurricane Sandy was destructive, and it was a killer. Around 150 people were directly killed by Sandy, half of them in the United States. Dozens more died in the aftermath. Haiti reported several dozen deaths from floods and tens of thousands of cattle lost. Sandy caused around $50 billion worth of damage, making it the second most expensive hurricane in the United States since the 1920s. It impacted millions of lives as it struck a very populated part of the coastline that doesn't often see direct hurricane strikes. In the United States, far more than 500,000 homes were damaged or destroyed. In Cuba, 250,000 homes were damaged and 17,000 were destroyed. The track of Hurricane Sandy and its strength where it made landfall were unusual, so many people may not have expected it to be as bad as it was, especially with it arriving in early fall. Sandy stopped construction, commerce, and transportation. At the height of the storm, Lower Manhattan lost power. Over 8.5 million people had no electricity. Utility crews from other states assisted in the recovery, but some families went without power for several weeks, having to wait in long lines for supplies. Cleanup was immense, and so was the amount of debris. Government, along with volunteer agencies, helped with local groups to shelter, feed, and care for people in the aftermath. Hoboken, New Jersey may have been hit the hardest, with half of the city flooded, including the Rail Transit Center. Restoring electricity there required the pruning or cutting of nearly 50,000 trees. Damage for the coast of central and northern New Jersey was unprecedented. This was before Sandy. This was after Sandy. Sandy created new inlets along the barrier islands. Entire communities were flooded, with houses washed off foundations, and cars and boats carried inland by the surge. Fire, followed by storm surge, left nothing where many homes once stood. The majority of buildings in Mantoloking, New Jersey were flooded, damaged, or destroyed. The pier at Seaside Heights was nearly demolished, years before Sandy, and then after Sandy. The state of New Jersey alone saw damage to over 345,000 housing units. 22,000 of them were uninhabitable. Tens of thousands of people were forced away from their homes, with some having no home to return to. Rising water not only flooded major transportation tunnels and subway stations, but it also compromised underground utilities. It took days and weeks to pump out water. Sandy forced the New York Stock Exchange to close for 2 days. Storm surge flooding was the highest that many people had ever seen in their lifetimes. This resulted in air rescues from the New York Police Department. In Queens, New York, ruptured gas lines during the storm resulted in fire that burned many homes to the ground in the Breezy Point community. From storm surge destruction on Staten Island to flooding of mass transit stations to fire and repairs to utilities and infrastructure, the cost of damage for New York City alone was over $19 billion. With dollar losses for virtually all states on the eastern seaboard, lives were impacted and lives were lost. Some people were killed by falling trees. Wind and heavy snow combined to knock down trees and limbs in the Appalachians. Buildings collapsed from the wet, heavy snow. The storm surge, rainwater, and even snow show that wind is not the only threat of a hurricane or large storm system. Even after Sandy had moved on into southeastern Canada, there were injuries during cleanup in the United States, with many people getting cuts to their hands, arms, and legs, or straining their backs. While Sandy was no longer a hurricane at landfall, given its widespread destruction, death, and damage costs, its name has since been retired.